This is the easiest way to close 2 to 3 real estate deals every single month without being on camera, without posting content, and without prospecting. Today, I'm bringing on Nathan Phillips, who has cracked the code of Google pay-per-click ads for real estate agents. And he breaks down everything A to Z, the exact ad he's running, where he's sending traffic to, how he's following up with the exact script, and his entire follow-up process start to finish of how he's being able to close upwards of 7 deals in 1 month like he did just last month with a very small budget on Google AdWords. Now, before bringing on Nathan, I want to mention if you want his help for free, I'll link his calendar below so you can book a conversation to chat with him. But without further ado, let's talk all things Google Ads for realtors and somebody who's doing it at an extremely high level. But it's so simple, you're going to be mind blown. So let's bring on Nathan and dive into how to convert Google ads. All right, Nathan, so super excited to have you on here. You know, as you and I talked about off camera, we haven't really had too many people come on and talk about Google ads. And transparently, it's one of the most often and common requests that I get is, you know, are Google ads worth it? Do they still work? How do you do it? And I know that that's something that you've been able to thrive with. So I'm excited to kind of unpack that on a deeper level with somebody who's actually doing it. But before diving in, just give people a quick rundown, who you are, where you're from, and what kind of got you into Google ads specifically.
Yeah. So I'm in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Originally from Nashville, Tennessee, but I moved out here, late teenage years and kind of been here for a while. When I started in real estate, I was really kind of struggling trying to figure out, like, how do I get leads? Where do I get this stuff from? And did a lot of research. And funny enough, I actually found your YouTube videos talking about Facebook ads, and ran that for a little while. And it didn't really go that well, just from lead conversion. And looking back now, I know that was on me. That wasn't the ads. Um, so, trying to find different avenues and things that would work. Just kind of one thing led to another. And I decided to go with Google because it was essentially the same as Facebook, just in my opinion, seemed like higher intent.
Yeah, 100%, man. And it's good that you brought that up. Like, two components of the Facebook ads is that, number one, you know, you just having the maturity to accept that, you know, usually most people have a lead conversion problem. Generating leads is easy, but also that blends into the fact that Facebook ads are probably the easiest leads to get, but also the lowest quality. And so there's
Yeah.
always a bit of a trade-off there. They're the easiest to create, they're the easiest to get, they're the fastest to get. But unless you're, you know, pretty skilled at lead conversion and follow-up, then you're just going to have a bunch of leads and no deals. And Google is kind of a, you know, beautiful blend of consistency, frequency, but quality as well. So let's start kind of diving into what you're doing on Google Ads, what type of ads you're running, and then we can dive a little bit deeper because I know the magic is in the FU or the follow-up, and that's where you've pretty much won the game.
Yeah, for sure. So I learned a long time ago. The saying is that simple scales, fancy fails. So when I run my Google ads, I kind of try to stick with that. I really don't go too, crazy complex. But the main one that I run, it's just a general search. So the keywords that I have, they target people that are searching for homes for sale here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. My ad comes up, and I just make sure that the headlines, they're actually attention grabbing. They're saying things like, number one, it's specific to their headlines, like, or their keywords. Homes for sale in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And then under that, I might have something that says, 250 plus listings, click here, free sign up. Really anything that I think is going to grab someone's attention enough for them to click on it and come into the website.
Yeah, well, I think
So,
that's it, you know, I'd love to know your process for this because when I got started, I also ran Google Ads. And the process that I've always run through with Google Ads when creating headlines and things like that is, you know, going onto Google, actually doing a search for homes for sale in your city and seeing what the competitors are doing and saying, okay, this is clearly what's showing up. How do I make mine stand out and grab a little bit more attention than theirs. And you can kind of do a quick litmus test to see what's already out there and how you can just make it better. Very similar to the process that I go to with like YouTube thumbnails or something like that. So, what's your process when it comes to designing or creating a proper headline, description, and some of the different elements that go into a Google ad?
Yeah, so I definitely do that. I definitely, like, I'll do my own Google searches. I'll see what other companies are doing. Obviously Zillow, Realtor.com, they're the ones that they're popping up first. So I'm looking at that and I'm seeing like what are they doing. And then number two, I'm trying to put myself in the in the buyer's position and say, like what are they looking for? In that, I'll actually go to the MLS that I'm a part of, and I'll do a search, for because one of the filters I can do is new construction. I'll see, how many new construction homes have sold in the last, 30, 60 days. And in addition to that, I'll also try to figure out where the price points are. In my particular area, a lot of the new construction homes that are being sold, they're in like the three to $500,000 range. So when I go and I build the ad, then that's something that I'm going to showcase is new construction homes for sale, Winston Salem, North Carolina, $300,000 to $400,000 range, and that seems to get a pretty good response and click through rate.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think that concept of just putting yourself in the consumer buyer's shoes is the most pivotal one, because I find just from working with thousands of agents that whenever agents are creating ads for Facebook or Google, YouTube, TikTok, they're always creating it from the perspective of a realtor, like what they think they would want to see, instead of looking at it from the unbiased lens of what's actually valuable to the buyer. Like, as you alluded to, by doing the search and going that extra step to get that data, convenience sells. And the more convenient you can make it for somebody to, look at that ad versus the other ones and say, this ad is speaking directly to me and what I'm looking for, the more likely they are to click on it, right? And I think a lot of
Mhm.
people overlook that concept when they're creating their ads.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's just something that you got to do, and I try to do that just in sales in general too. Like when you meet somebody, you can't really come at it from the perspective of a realtor, so to speak, because like you have all this knowledge, but you just have to put yourself in someone else's position, understand where they're at, and then try to speak to that.
Yeah, 100%. Well, let's start diving a little bit deeper. I want to get to follow up in a second here, but one of the questions that people have is kind of looking at the data and also some of the key elements when it comes to numbers. So for you, if somebody's to get started today, or even just kind of, you know, tapping into what you're actually doing yourself, what does a daily budget look like? And based on that budget, what type of lead flow are you getting?
Right now, I spend anywhere from $50 to $60 a day. I didn't start off there. When I
Mhm.
started it, it was probably like $15, $20 a day. And once I started seeing some results, then I slowly built it up over time. Right now, I'm getting an average cost per lead of it's right at about $13. And so in the course of a month with my ad budget, I'm generating 120, 125 plus leads a month, and that I mean that's good for my business. When I first started, though, like I say, I was only spending $15, $20 a day, and when your Google ads first get going, it takes a little bit of time for the algorithm to pick your ad up and to start understanding like who you're looking for and stuff like that. So my cost per lead, it was actually probably closer to $25, $30 per lead. So if I was talking to somebody that just started their ads, I would say, set your ad somewhere $15, $20 a day, and you can probably expect, maybe a lead a day.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think that goes back to the process that most people struggle with when it comes to ads anyways. They always look at it as an expense instead of an investment into their business. And so when they hear $15, $20 a day, their mindset, for anybody that is kind of weaker minded, ends up immediately defaulting to I'm losing $15-20 a day instead of, the people like you that have done well and people like myself, being able to say that's a deposit, that's an investment into my business that I can get a return on. And the only
hmm
way that it's an expense is if you don't get a return on it, which is you not doing the work to do the follow up and convert them into deals. Because $13 a lead is based on real estate a really healthy cost per lead in today's world, based on ever rising ad costs. And if you can turn X percent of those leads into one commission, like the return on that is ridiculous. And I don't think people really understand that, if your average commission's $8,000 and you have to spend $2,000 to get that deal, that is still a 4 times return on your money. And so many
hmm
people kind of look at advertising and they say, if I don't get a lead that turns into a closed deal in the first week, then it's not for me. I spent $500 and I'm done, instead of committing to it. And I think that's something you've done really well, is saying like, and anybody that's familiar with advertising knows this, there is that test phase in the beginning where you kind of have to commit to that process and say, I'm going to do this for months and do
hmm
everything I can to make it work out. And if it doesn't, then at least I could say I gave it a fair shot. But you have to take ownership on yourself to realize, like, if your ads aren't performing, if you're not converting, that's not a problem with the platform. Like, you and I both know people, and you're even doing it, that have made a ton of money using these strategies, not based on the platform, but because of your work. So I think that's a good amount. Now, here's something that's an interesting question before we get into the follow up, because this is probably the question that I get the most when it comes to Google Ads. Is you're running an ad, how do you decide, or when do you decide whether to flip that ad off or to keep it on? In terms of, many people will run an ad and say, how do I know if it's performing? Like, how do I know that I should continue to run this ad, or if I need to shut it off, make a tweak, adjust it, whatever, before starting to scale and put more money behind it?
Yeah, yeah. So the number one metric that I use to track that specifically is the click-through rate. So if I've got an ad running, and I could be wrong, but I think the industry standard click-through rate is like 3 to 5%. So if I'm running an ad and I see that the click-through rate is going down, then that tells me that the ad is not compelling enough for someone to actually click on it and go to my website, right? So if I see it start to creep down, then I'll go in there and I will adjust some of those headlines and try to make it a little bit more catchy, and just do something to spice it up a little bit. Um, and then if it continues to go down, then that tells me, okay, well, there's something going on here, and it's not bringing people into the website. I have to get them into the website in order to convert them. So let me just table this and I'm going to try something else.
Yeah, it makes sense. And, it, you know, I like that you talked about that, because that's what I really wanted to extract, is that many people seem to have this expectation in real estate that there is one ad that works perfectly in every market 100% of the time, that you can start today, run forever, and generate leads that close every single month. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, listen, if that existed, every realtor would be rich, because I'd create a tutorial on it tomorrow and everybody would do it and everybody would be rich. Like, it
Right.
doesn't exist. And that's why any avenue of lead generation that you choose takes work. And
hmm
the work, when it comes to Google Ads, thankfully, it creates more leverage than almost any other platform. But it does take work, and it does take you going in and kind of finessing it a little bit in order to make sure that it is performing. But the thing that I do love about Google Ads, that I hope people, kind of take to heart, is the fact that when it comes to Facebook ads, if you set a budget of $10-15 a day, you're spending $10-15 a day, no matter what, whether you're getting clicks or you're not. And the good
hmm
part about Google Pay per click is you're paying per click. And so it not only gives you far better targeting abilities compared to Facebook, but you also have better conversion metrics when it comes to what the metric is that people are actually, what you're getting in return for the money you're spending.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, when I've heard it talked about this before, but when you're running ads on Facebook, you're essentially just putting a billboard up on a highway, and people they're just flying by it. It's maybe they're thinking about homes, and Meta, they're really good about their tracking and all that, figuring out who likes what, and, um, putting the right ads in front of the right people, but it's just not the same as someone physically going on to either their computer or their phone or their tablet, whatever it is, and literally punching in, homes for sale. That's like some direct intent, and they're much closer to the purchase point than anybody else really. Um, and kind of to your point, people think that they can just create one ad and just have it run forever. I mean, I'm part of a few different Facebook groups, and I talk with other realtors and stuff, and it's funny. Like, I mean, that's literally what they do.
Yeah.
They'll run an ad, they'll run it for like a month or two, and they'll say, I lost $500, and I'm never going to get that money back. It was a waste. And it's just you got to commit to it. You do have to work the system, and you just got to invest yourself into it along with some dollars.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think if you're expecting full-time or part-time results from any activity you're doing, you have to put in full-time or part-time effort. Like if you're not going to sit there, your alternative is, do you want to spend 3 hours a day hating your life cold calling or door knocking every day, or do you want to spend that same 3 hours a day learning how to run something like Google Ads and spend that 3 hours a day being able to learn how to tweak those ads in order to get it perform, so no matter what, 24/7 you have leads coming in? Like, you got to pick your poison a little bit here and make a decision, because if you don't generate leads, you're going to go broke, and you have to choose what do you want to do to generate leads. And this is a really incredible way to do it. So now let's get into what I know everybody's going to be interested in is, they've clicked the ad, they've gone to the website. What happens? What do you like? What type of website are you sending them to? What the heck happens after they get on the website? Like, let's start talking about how to actually convert those leads.
Yeah, yeah. So converting them, it's definitely you know well, let me say this first. So when people click through and they get to your website, the number one thing to actually get them as a lead is making sure that your landing page is accurate. Because if somebody clicks an ad that says new construction homes, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 3 to 400,000, they click it and they go in, and then all of a sudden the landing page is like 100 homes of um, properties that were built in like the 70s,
Yeah.
and they range anywhere from 200 to a million, then they're going to be like, what the heck, why did I do this? And they're just going to bounce right off the website.
Yeah.
um, so making sure that the landing page is coinciding with what you're actually advertising, that's a really big point. And it kind of sounds like a no brainer, but believe it or not, I've talked to people
Hmm.
that's exactly what they're doing. And it's you just got to have the two working together. It's a big cohesive system. So the landing pages that I run that seem to be the most effective, they're pretty simple. It's just a list view of properties. So I use a list view because it's a lot more user friendly than like a map view. So
Hmm.
if someone clicks into my ad and they see a map of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, it's a lot more work on their end to have to like hover around and try to find the right house and stuff like that. It makes it a lot easier, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, that got to put yourself in someone else's position. Like, what is going to be the easiest process for them to get what they want? So if they click your ad, they're looking for new construction homes, 2 to 400,000 or 3 to 400,000, whatever it is. Then the landing page is going to be just a list view of new construction homes that are 2 to 400,000, 3 to 400,000, whatever that may be.
Yeah, and it all comes down to just designing a convenient customer journey. Like, what is every little touch point, and making sure that it works in harmony so that people know that this is actually what I signed up for. And getting to that point, what website are you using? Is it like KV Core, Lofty, or Bold Trail, or Go High Level? And when people land on that page, are you having something where it captures, like, after they view a couple properties, it force captures or prompts them to capture name, email, phone number? Like, what type of site and what type of lead capture are you using?
Yeah, so I use Real Geeks. I'm kind of experimenting a little bit with Bold Trail, trying to like build the website up and see what I can get there. But right now I'm using Real Geeks. It's crazy user friendly and easy to build and work off of. So that's what I started with, and that's like I say, I'm working towards Bold Trail, but Real Geeks is where it's at right now. And yeah, when the lead clicks in through the ad and they come onto that list landing page, um, I let them click into one property and they can click through a couple of pictures. But after I think it's three pictures, they get a lead form, and the lead form is name, phone number, email.
Mhm.
Um, they have to put those three metrics in order to continue looking at properties on the website. I've tried it a couple of different ways. There's there's an option that they can use their Google sign up, and then they could use like sign up through Facebook. But the kind of like the trouble that I've run into that is that when people use those links, it's typically only putting in their name and email address, which is
Yeah.
fine for, if I want to build a pipeline of, potentials way down the road. But if I want somebody, that's gonna be making a move in the near future, then I gotta have their phone number, because I learned a long time ago that like deals happen on the phone. Um, I've gotten people that they go into the pipeline and they get my automated emails, they get my search property alerts and stuff like that, and that have moved forward. But the number one thing is getting people on the phone, and you can't do that without a phone number. So I've found that it's really important just to have that metric on there, or so that when they sign up, I'm getting their phone number.
Yeah, I agree. I think, if you talk to anybody that's done a ton of lead generation, their definition of a lead is name, email, phone number. If you don't have all those three things, it's not even considered a real lead.
Yeah.
And I also know one of the rebuttals that some agents have is they're like, I don't want to be pushy, so I don't want to put a force, lead capture form. I want to remove it from the website. I'm like, do you want leads, or do you not want leads? Like, you got to
Right.
pick, because I get that people don't want, whether they're using KV Core, Bold Trail, Lofty, whatever CRM they're using, Follow Up Boss, is that they don't want to have that pushy, salesy approach, so they want to remove it. But you're going to have no leads. Like, the whole name of the game is to generate leads, and I'd rather have people, have the potential of generating leads versus waiting for them to contact you. So, I think that's pretty, sound and a good approach when it comes to Google Ads. But now, what most people struggle with is, you get the contact information. Now what?
Yeah, yeah. So now, once you've got the contact information, this is where like it's on you 100%.
Yeah.
You've got to pick up the phone and you got to make the phone call. And I'll tell you, probably 9 times out of 10, I don't get somebody on the first phone call. It's very rare that they'll answer immediately, and when they do, it's nice. But the key really is just in the follow up. Um, I'm very specific in the follow-up cadence that I do, and every single lead that I get has the same approach. So I'm calling them as soon as I can when they register. Now, when I first started doing this, I'd get a lead, I'd get all excited, and I would just drop everything to make that phone call. Now I'm at a point where I'm a little bit more busy, and I can't do that. But what I do is I time block on my calendar and I make sure that every lead that comes in, they're getting a phone call within 24 hours. Um, I've found that, if you go too long without reaching out to them, then when you call them, they're like, who are you? Like, what's going on? Why I didn't sign up on a website. Like, people, they move on the internet like a mile a minute, so their attention just gets gone. But I make sure that I'm following up with them at least within a 24-hour time span. That way, it's still kind of fresh on their mind. And again, I don't just call the one time. If I did that, I'd never get a deal. Like I'm calling them every other day for the first 2 weeks. If I don't get an answer during that timeline, then I'm going to put them on about a 3 week rotation where I'm just going to call them once every 3 weeks. I do that for an entire year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's my plan. Um, I don't think I've ever had someone that I've called them every 21 days for a year and they've never answered the phone. Um, so it's really just about persistence and making sure that you're following up and you're staying in touch with them. Most of the time, I will get somebody on the phone within a week, and once I get them on the phone, um, there's three main goals that I'm targeting, and number one is just to create human connection, build rapport, let them know like I'm a real person on the other end of this phone because I know you're a real person on the other end, and we just need to build some sort of connection and rapport. Number two is once we're established with each other, is figure out what is their goal. What kind of property are they looking for? Some of the stuff I've already got dialed in because I know the ads that they were looking at, and with Real Geeks, I can see the history of what properties they were looking at. But I don't ever bring that up to them. I let them share it with me
Mm-hmm.
because I want throughout this whole process, I want people to know that they're in control, that I'm just here as a guide. I'm not here as the hero. They're the hero. It's their story, and I'm just here to help walk them through it. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of most of my follow up. Oh, number three, I don't think I established that one. The third thing is their timeline. That's going to be super specific on how I continue to touch base with them. So if they tell me, yeah, I'm ready to make a purchase in the next 30, 60, 90 days, well, I'm going to be a lot more aggressive with how I'm staying in touch with them. And when I say aggressive, I don't mean, like I'm like, hey, you need to, check out this property now. I just mean
Yeah.
aggressive in frequency. Like I'm probably gonna call them once a week. They're gonna go on my email list. I send a weekly email blast. It's called Motivation Monday. It's just a quick blurb about mindset, making sure that everybody is getting pumped and kind of in the right headspace for the upcoming week. And then, like I say, just keeping in touch with them through that timeline and that 30, 60, 90 days. Now, if they tell me that, it's probably going to be a while, 6 to 12 months, then it's going to be a little bit less frequent. I'm going to be a little bit less aggressive with my follow up on it. It's going to be more along the lines of, maybe once a month, once every 3 weeks, something like that. And the goal for this particular follow up is just to continue building rapport and just to stay in touch until they fall into that 30, 60, 90 time frame. And then I'm going to be, once or twice or once a week, once every 2 weeks, and trying to actually set an appointment to get in front of them, get face to face.
Yeah.
If they tell me that their timeline is a year or more, then that's going to be maybe once a quarter. I'm just gonna I'll call them once a quarter. Again, they're going to go on my email list so that they're getting a weekly email from me every Monday. And one thing I didn't mention, of course, is um, whether I have talked to a lead or not, because I can see their search history. I'm setting them up on listing alerts based on what I think that they would like. I'm setting them up on a monthly market report so that they can see what properties that they like, how that's moving and transacting through this particular area. And really, it's just all those different touch points that they repetitively see my name and information, and it just over time builds some trust and credibility.
Yeah. No, I think that's perfect. There's so much that I want to unpack there. The first about frequency of lead follow up, and I think it's really interesting how the majority of agents ignore data and stats. And if you look at data and stats, it says that the average lead converts after the seventh touch point. That is proven data across decades of real estate follow up, 7 touch points. But the average realtor stops after the third. And so when you
Yeah.
look at that, it's a volume game, and it's really not that hard if you just look at the data and follow the data and realize, like you alluded to, you have to just be consistent with your follow-up, and stats prove that you're probably going to get the outcome that you're looking for if you just do it for this amount of time. So I think looking at that from a very analytical approach is important. That gives people a little bit more hope that if they do continue, it is going to convert. It's just a matter of time. And another thing that you said that I really want people to pick up on is that leads are real people. And any agent that I've ever seen struggle with lead conversion treats leads like a number. It's burn and churn. Relationship doesn't matter. How do I get in touch? How do I get the deal? It's all about me, me, me. And anyone that I've
Mhm.
seen thrives with lead conversion is they realize, like, if that person on the other side was your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, how would you treat them? How would you want somebody else to treat them? Okay, well, you should probably go do that because that is somebody's mom or dad or father or son, or daughter or son. And so that concept is really important. And then I also want to echo to people, like, it, any CRM has these functions. And so if you're at a brokerage where you have a free access to a CRM, or you already have a CRM, number one, use it, because pretty much all of them will give you these functions. But number two, live by it. Like any successful lead conversion agent that I've ever talked to lives by their CRM. It's their holy Bible. It's where they live, because that's where you can track things, and the numbers, it's a numbers game, right? And so I think it's important that to be able to even follow up at that capacity, you need to be able to track it. And that's where I had one other question associated with follow up is, are you just doing calls, or are you leveraging your CRM in order to do text and email as well?
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up because I did forget to mention that in my follow-up process. Um, the phone calls, that's the only thing that I'm doing manually. So absolutely, I'm leveraging the CRM, and I'm a big believer in leveraging technology as much as you can because it just makes your life so much easier. So from a manual perspective, yes, I'm doing the calls and I'm doing that follow-up cadence, but I'm leveraging the CRM through automatic texting and emails. So I have it's a 1,000-day drip campaign, which is roughly 3 years that my CRM is going to do the work for me if I never get in touch with this lead. So I've built it out. I have text messages, emails, and they're all somewhat specific. So kind of we'll just go back to the um, new construction ad with Google. If I see that is what these people are interested in, and how these people got to the website, what they're looking at, then that's the drip campaign that I'm going to put them on. It's going to be all text messages and emails that are relating to new construction homes for sale in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. That way, what I'm doing is speaking directly to them. It's the same thing, I mean, throughout everything that I'm doing. It's getting to know who they are, what they like, and speaking to it, and then again, letting them know that they're in control the whole way.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love that. And so, I guess one of the questions that I know is going to be on everybody's mind knowing this is saying, okay, you're running, X amount per day, $50 a day, you're generating 100 plus leads per month. What does that look like if you actually follow the process and you do, the essentials like you're talking about? What does that look like in terms of deal flow, if you kind of average it out over like an average decent month of yours, what does that look like in terms of leads to actually close transactions?
Yeah. So on average, it's going to be 2 to 3 deals per month. That's what I'm doing right now. When I first started it, it wasn't that. I had to really dial in my follow-up process and get everything that we're talking about kind of plugged in and set up appropriately. But once I did, then I started to see the results, and it probably took me about 6 months before I got to that 2 deals a month timeline. And so now on average it's 2 to 3 deals a month. Actually, in for the really good months, last month, back in August, I put 7 properties under contract, and that was crazy. It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was the best month I've ever had. But it's all just making sure that the systems work together and that you're doing basically the same thing every day, which is just that follow up, rinse and repeat. Make sure you stick with it.
Yeah. And that goes to that commitment of anybody that I've ever seen build a successful business is incredible at one thing. They might dabble in other things, but they've got one thing where it's like, that's my jam. I'm the best at that. And the rest is kind of supplementary in terms of maybe building their brain on social, different things like that. And, I love that you're able to generate 2, 3 deals a month. And there's still so much room for you to increase that, knowing that there's different optimization strategies. There's ways to be able to, for example, have an ISA call within the first minute, 5 minutes, which increases conversion rate. Like there's all these layers of like ascension to Google Ads, but you don't need that to do very well. And I think that's what people struggle with is they say, I know the data. If you don't call in the first 5 minutes, lead conversion decreases by like 80%. If I don't, if I'm not a tech wizard, I can't run these ads. And they make up and they fabricate all these excuses why they can't do it because they can't do it perfectly.
Right.
And it's very rare that I come across somebody doing ads at the highest capacity possible. But by the time they get there, it's because they've been doing it for 5 years. They've got a team, they've outsourced, they've hired. It's better to just get started, and you've proved it. You're doing incredibly well with the basics. And I think that's a message that everybody needs to hear. And so, the last thing we always like to pull this full circle with, Nathan, is, obviously you and I are partners. You made a decision to, join us over at EXP with the Wolfpack. And we're always curious to see, what made that decision, what helped you make that decision to come over here. And if people want help with their Google ads, like what can they expect from you?
Yeah, yeah. So, um, speaking specifically to the Google Ads, if somebody needs help with that, I'm 100% all in. Like I'll sit down with you. We'll hop on a Zoom together. We'll share screens. I'll show you what's working for me. I'll help you build something, and we'll get it working for you. But kind of going back to what you were talking about, like we're partners, and how did all that come about? Well, when I first started running the ads and I was getting these leads, I really didn't have the follow-up processes and things in place that I do now. And I was just knocking my head against a wall because I was like, I'm getting tons of leads. I'm spending money, but they're not turning into deals. And I don't know what my problem is. Um, and finally, I just kind of accepted that it's not the lead issue, kind of like we were talking about earlier. It's not the leads coming in, it's me, and what am I doing with them? So I got connected with Joshua Smith, and he is, he's a big part of why I'm here today. He taught me all these different follow up processes and things like that, and then he made a move over to EXP, and I learned so much from him, and I was like, okay, well, I mean, if he's going over here, like, what am I missing? And I had a couple of conversations with him, and then I moved over here to EXP. And, it's actually really cool because, like I told you about in the beginning, I pretty much started the foundation of advertising and learning everything through your free YouTube videos. And now, a few years later, here I am in the Wolfpack group with you. We're partners and stuff like that. So just being on this call today is really cool, and it's nice to see it come full circle. And there's really just a big benefit from not only having you and Josh and the other big people in our group, but just the community in general. I mean, it's super supportive. I can throw things up in school, and I get answers back from people all over the country and from all levels of production. And there's no way that I would know what I know and be able to implement everything that I've done so far without the support that I've had from guys like you and Josh and just all the great people that are inside the Wolfpack.
I love that, man. And I think, it's such an important message because, if you look at stats, 74% of agents at the time of this recording haven't closed a deal this year, and we're like 3/4 of the way through the year. And it doesn't have to be that way. And like you alluded to, the fact that, for free, people can sit down with you, share the screen, build out a Google Ads strategy to be able to close 2, 3 deals a month, have Josh's help, Josh Smith's help on lead conversion strategies, have my help when it comes to scaling the organic side and generating consistent free leads. You've got 3 layers of people here for free that would usually charge thousands a month to be able to support you, and now you get to build it together. And I think that's one of the most important things that you echoed is community. We're in a time with AI, with every brokerage that's growing right now as a cloud-based brokerage. There is less connection than we've ever seen, and it's only going to get worse. And many people don't take the time to build that ecosystem, the culture, the community of people that want to collaborate with each other. And that's something that, I think we've done pretty well at. So again, guys, if you want to book a call with Nathan, it's in both the description and the pinned comment. Have a conversation, because if you're not where you want to be in your business right now, you don't have to stay stuck. You can align with people that have been there, done that at the highest level, and are willing to pour into you and help you. So Nathan, any final words for people?
Just find what you like, stick with it, and I hope to see as many of you as possible here in the future.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, man, for sharing your blueprint. Super proud of you. And guys, book that call and we'll help take your business to a completely new level.